Coming to you from the shores of sparkling Lake Michigan, welcome to the National Writers Series, celebrating 15 years as a year-round book festival. We are the premier home for passionate readers who love inspiring conversations with best-selling and award-winning authors. Tonight, we welcome Pulitzer Prize-winning author Bryan Gruley and his new crime thriller, Bitterfrost. Bryan Gruley's Bitterfrost is my kind of crime novel, propelled by a razor-sharp plot that swirls around things we can all relate to: getting older, opportunities missed, and the uniting power of sports. Gruley's at the top of his game. Gruley is the Edgar-nominated author of 6 novels: Purgatory Bay, Bleak Harbor, the Starvation Lake trilogy, and his most recent, Bitterfrost. A lifelong journalist, he shared in the Wall Street Journal's Pulitzer Prize for coverage of the September 11th terrorist attacks. He lives in Traverse City with his wife Pamela, where he can be found playing hockey, singing in his band, or spending time with his children and grandchildren. Gruley will be joined in conversation by John U. Bacon. John Bacon has written 14 books, including 7 national bestsellers. He also hosts a popular leadership podcast, Let Them Lead, now in its 2nd season. He lives in Ann Arbor and Northern Michigan with his wife and son. John will be back to the National Writers Series on Thursday, November 6th to talk about his novel, The Gales of November, the untold story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The National Writers Series salutes our amazing audiences, dedicated volunteers, and generous supporters for helping us raise the next generation of readers and writers through our free education programs across the region. This season of amazing authors is made possible through major support by the Green Brick Foundation, Northgard Technology Group, Golden Fowler Home Furnishings, West Shore Bank, Traverse City Tourism. Tonight's sportsmanship sponsors are Keith and Joanne Gave. Tonight's editorial sponsor is Severn House. Tonight's live streaming is exclusively underwritten by Nancy Davey. Thanks to our major media sponsor, the Traverse City Record Eagle, and our media partner, Interlochen Public Radio. For information on future events, programs, and how to support our nonprofit work, please visit nationalwriterseries.org. Now, please welcome to the stage #1 New York Times bestselling author, Doug Stanton.
Good evening, everyone. Is this on? Hey, everybody. Wow. Full house, packed house here at the Illuvin in Traverse City, Michigan. I see a lot of friendly faces in the crowd. We have 2 great authors on stage tonight. They're returning, as Kendall Kocher just said in that fabulous introduction. Without further ado, I just wanted to welcome you personally, and thank you for being here. I want to bring on stage Bryan Gruley and John U. Bacon. Come on out. We're going to talk as we normally do and then have a Q&A at some point. So as the evening progresses, prepare your questions. Here you go,
Bryan. Big thanks to Doug and Ann Stanton. I won't preach too much here, but I got to say, I'm from Ann Arbor, spent a lot of time in my life in Traverse City, up north and so on. The National Writers Series is one of the best in the nation. It's an incredible gem for Traverse City, and we're lucky to have it. So, Doug and Ann.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. A treasure. It's a treasure for Traverse. It's a treasure for Michigan. It's a treasure for the entire writing and reading community all over the world. Bravo.
Indeed. And we're in for, I got a plan here, but you know what they say? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. These are my plans. I'm pretty sure it's not going to go like this. But we're going to have a great time. Bryan's a great writer and a great conversationalist. Let's dive in. Oh, also, by the way, thanks to Keith and Joanne Gave, 2 of our sponsors tonight and old pals of ours. So, Keith and Diane, thank you very much. All right, the overview. It's a whodunit, by the way, Bitterfrost, of course. It's a whodunit where even the main suspect is not sure if he did it. And that's established early on. That's a hell of a trick, trust me, for a writer. This is not for rookies, to say the least. By the way, I got to tell you briefly about the titles. We have what? Purgatory Bay, Starvation Island, Bleak Harbor, and Bitterfrost. You don't work for the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, do you, by any chance, or the Tourism Board?
It's kind of happy.
It's kind of happy. It's a lot of fun. The cozy confines, of course, are northern Michigan. You're reading about Kalkaska, Mansalona, etc. in this book, which for me is a ton of fun, naturally. Also, by the way, we're both hockey players. He gets the hockey right, which may not matter to you, but it matters a lot to me. right down to all the swearing. So he spares you nothing in the locker room. So heads up on that one, but it's authentic, that's for sure. So anyway, before we get in, you are a Michigander, a native Michigander. Your childhood here in Michigan.
Yeah. Grew
Tell
up
us.
in Redford. Well, I was born in Detroit, Grace Northwest. I grew up in Redford, just outside of the city. I went to elementary school at St. Gemma inside the city, and I went to Detroit Catholic Central in the city then. It's now Novi, but yeah.
Right, and where you played hockey, I believe.
I played hockey there, yeah. And I love I've never given up on my teams. I've moved a lot of places, and I love the Detroit sports teams, especially the Red Wings.
That is called shameless pandering, by the way. Not too many
Not that
Avalanche
shameless.
fans. Not too many Av fans here, I don't think. You're attracted to storytelling, but not necessarily journalism. Tell us about that.
Well, I never really aspired to be a journalist per se. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, I fell in love with the Hardy Boys mysteries, so I invented my own Hardy Boys. Chip and Scott Anderson, they were twins, and I used to write these stories out longhand on loose leaf paper, and I drew little drawings, like they had those cool drawings in the Hardy Boys books. The first book I read was The Crisscross Shadow, and I read these stories aloud to the second grade class at St. Gemma Elementary, even though Sister Mary Rosella, she didn't like me. And
If she could see you now.
yeah, and so that's when I started to write, and then I kept writing, and when I was a kid and when I was in high school, when I was in college even, I was thinking, I want to write novels. But by the time I got out of Notre Dame, I realized neither did I have the skill to write a novel. I had nothing to write about except, how many novels can you write about shooting pool and drinking beer?
Let's find out.
Yeah. So I went into journalism, and my first job was at the Brighton Argus.
The Brighton Argus, hey, we got
Okay.
one. Thank
we
you
have
very
an Argus
much.
veteran here? Awesome.
The Kalamazoo Gazette, the Detroit News. There we go. Sorry,
Wow. Awesome.
I should do this more slowly, apparently. Kalamazoo Gazette, the Detroit News. That's my alma mater. Then, of course, the Wall Street Journal.
Yep.
For which you shared a Pulitzer Prize. That is not a small thing.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I want to emphasize I shared it. It was a staff award. It was for...
Well, he says the staff award. It's not the whole staff. It's a handful of people, a very
Well,
small list.
It was actually a lot of people because, that was a Tuesday, right? And a beautiful day. And I was in the Washington Bureau. And, of course, in the Washington Bureau on Tuesdays, we had a staff meeting at 9:15. And that particular day, now and then we had a guest speaker. And that particular day, our guest speaker was a guy named James Berger, who worked for the State Department under President Clinton. He was an expert on terrorism. Anyway, I was sitting at my desk, and I could see people gathered around this TV, and something was going on. I walked up there, and, there's flames coming out of one of the towers. And we all just figured some plane just, crashed into the tower, which is true, but we thought it was like a little plane. And then we saw another plane, and then there's another explosion. And my colleague, Bob Greenberger, who covered the State Department, said, this is a terrorist attack. And so we never had our staff meeting, and we all ended up in the bureau chief's office on the corner of Connecticut Avenue and L, and he was trying to raise somebody in New York City, but nothing worked. They couldn't get through, and while we were in there's like 20 of us. One of our reporters, Neil King, got a phone call on his cell from another reporter who was driving in from the West, who said, and Neil said, "Hey, Ted says a plane just flew into the Pentagon, which is, it's way more creepier hearing that like that than on TV or anything. And so then, you know, we just had to go to work. And so New York was incommunicado. We couldn't reach any bosses. But my colleagues up there were getting off ferries, getting out of cabs, getting off their bicycles. However, they were going to go down to the Journal because the Journal was kitty corner. Our office, you could, after the tragedy, you could look into ground zero from our newsroom. And they were just showing up, and without any direction, they started to document what happened on that day. And whenever I hear these pundits talk from the left or the right, talk about the media, I just think of those people risking their lives to tell us this is what happened. And so I was getting these emails, later in the day because the email didn't work until later. And my email was going click, 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 click. And it was an arm in the street, a head in the street, the people jumping. One of our reporters was in the newsroom watching the people jump. He wrote his own story about that. And the one that made me, I had a gag reflex about a priest who was put on a gurney and he swallowed a bunch of that wet ash and he was coughing it up, and I had a gag reflex. And then, you know, we wrote stories, and that was that day. All these stories about what happened. And it was a terrible day, obviously, but it was the day that whatever you do, there's some day in your career where you will be asked to use everything you know about what you do, right? And that was that day for all of us. And so I'm proud to have been there. I'm glad I was there. Thank you.
You were on that story for days, weeks, months, really, correct?
Yeah. I did other stories, follow-up stories, but I was doing more long-form narratives, John, rather than covering breaking news. That was my job.
Fast forward more than a year, the happy news, if you will, when you guys get the call that you have won a Pulitzer Prize. I have no idea what this is like. I'm just curious myself. No one's ever called me about this. Tell us what that is like.
You know, in this particular case, I think it was a mix. It was bittersweet, a little more sweet than bitter, but it was sad.
Even on that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were glad. You know, we all went out and celebrated that we won, that we were recognized, but it was still about a really terrible thing that happened, and you know that I was already bound to that bureau. It was a great place to work, and I'm happy to be able to say, for what I did, I wrote the column 1, page 1 story. I could have taken the stuff I threw away and written a second story because I only had 3,000 words. I had 30,000 words of memos.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's about a third of a novel, by the way.
Yeah.
30,000 words.
It's about a third of a novel. And I think we were proud of ourselves, but, you know, to celebrate too crazy a Pulitzer about the worst tragedy in America since Pearl Harbor, it would have been not right. But
well said. What did you learn from journalism that you've applied to writing novels?
Well, you learn, obviously, it's forced on you, and so you learn it, economy of words. You learn observation, especially if you're writing narratives, like that was my job for most of my career. So you go to Hill City, Kansas, one of my colleagues said, "You should write Hill City is neither."
I was going to ask you, Hill City, Kansas does not sound right.
I was new at the Journal, and I just didn't have the guts to write that. That's a huge missed opportunity. But, you know, you go to Hill City, Kansas, or Trinary, Michigan, or Regent, North Dakota, and you want to observe every little detail that you see, that you hear, that you smell, that you taste, so that the reader can be comported to that place and be there as if you weren't there with them. So there's that translates. And then there's the main thing is getting people to read, to get through the story, sentence by sentence, graph by graph, paragraph by paragraph, scene by scene. The same thing in fiction, to get them there. And I wrote this story once about, it was set in Manistee, which is the model for Bitterfrost. And
there it is, the punchline.
There's more to say about that. But I went to Manistee. It was just after 9/11. I was searching little newspapers around America for 9/11 fallout stories. And I read the story in the Manistee News Advocate about some guy who killed a buck with his bare hands. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But it wasn't really a story yet until later in the week I found the DNR confiscated the buck. And people in Manistee were up in arms about this. So I went there and I wrote a story. And the lead on the story was Manistee, Michigan. David Gutowski, a self-employed plumber here, killed a 158-pound buck with his bare hands and a brown leather belt. Who is not going to read the next paragraph, right?
He's
And
right,
that's,
of course. You don't
that's
read
a
that and go,
skill.
Yeah, I heard that one already. What's the next one?
And that's the skill that you can really learn in journalism. And some editor is going to say, why is this paragraph in there? Or why is this sentence? Get rid of this. It's boring. Move the story, move it. And it's, even though a novel is way longer, obviously. The longest story I ever wrote at the Journal, I think, was 4,000 words. And novels anywhere from 80 to 100. It's the same thing, because if the reader gets bored or you confuse them, they have to stop too many times, then there's a trapdoor, and boom, they're gone. So I think I learned a lot from doing that applied to novels.
Speaking of which, your late buddy, Brian Doyle. Tell us about him. This is part of your transition from journalism to novelist. He had a few good lines on your behalf.
Doyle, for those of you who've never heard of Brian Doyle, you should look him up. He's the best writer I ever knew. Sorry, John.
I don't know you that well.
I ever personally knew. But we went to Notre Dame together. He was a year older than me, and he's gone now, but he wrote amazing essays and beautiful novels, and every now and then he would email me an essay that wasn't even published yet. And in the subject line it would say, "Will make you grin," or just "ha, ha, ha." And they were brilliant. He's such a good writer and had so much spirit and love of writing. But Doyle, and he loved my journalism, but I told him how much I wanted to write a novel. This was in the mid-90s or so. I was thinking about it, and he said, "Gruels, you don't really want to write a novel. You just want to have a book party." And, you know, he was half right. I really did want to have a book party. And I finally wrote a novel, and he was very proud of me, and I miss him. He was a genius.
How did you transition from, and why, from journalism to novelist? And by the way, many have tried this, and often unsuccessfully. It's harder than it looks.
I don't know if that's true, because I don't know what other people experience. But like I said, when I was a boy, when I was in high school, when I was in college, and all through my career, I wanted to write novels. And if you look at how my writing evolved, even at the Detroit News to the Journal and Business Week, I was writing long-form narratives. So stories with characters that go from A to B to whatever to Z, that have a beginning and a middle and an end. And so I didn't have the confidence, but I had that yearning. And books that kind of got me fired up that I can do this were Garp, The World According to Garp. Even though I read that in the 80s, and I didn't even try a novel until much later. And then the one I remember most is Mystic River. I was reading it, my wife Pam and I were on the Cape with her family, and I was reading Mystic River, and I thought, I can do this. This gives me permission, even though I don't pretend to be able to write like Dennis Lehane. But I get this story. I can write a story like this. And so I told my agent at the time, I had this idea. It had something to do with a day trader. And so I wrote like 25,000 words for her, and she said, this is good, but this isn't it. Why don't you write me a story about these middle-aged guys who play hockey in the middle of the night? And this was such great permission. And I said, well, I thought hockey players don't read.
Okay.
And she didn't.
He's not wrong. We know that.
And she said, it's fiction. Women will read it. I said, okay. And I immediately had an idea. Immediately, right then, which I won't share because it would spoil the book that became, how many years later? Almost 9 years later, Starvation Lake. And then we discussed setting. So I had this idea, and I told her the idea. It's really dark and twisted. And she goes, oh, that's always a winner. This is what agents do. And then I said, well, I think I'd like to set it in either downriver Detroit, which I'd played a lot of hockey in and was intimidated, particularly by Trenton.
How much time do we have?
Great. I played in that rink that had the corrugated tin roof. And
corrugated aluminum, Kennedy rink.
2,500
14
people.
state title banners hanging. No, I've not been there.
Yeah, who hate you. Yeah, we never beat Trenton. Tied them, but we never beat them. Anyway, that or Northern Michigan. I told Suzanne about my dad's place on Big Twin Lake, Kalkaska, near Kalkaska in Mansalona. I'd been going there since '71, and I just thought I knew that better. I didn't really know downriver. I'd played hockey down there, but I grew up in the west side, not downriver. So we decided, okay, let's do this. And so I stole the name of the lake that's a little north of Big Twin, Starvation. There's no town there. There's a country store, or a general store, and a bar. But it's a great name, and I wrote Starvation Lake. So that was step one in the transition. And I wrote for 2 or 3 years. I wrote this draft, and I realized right at the end, this thing came to me, and I'm like, oh shit! And it was the biggest twist in the book, so I had to go back and redo it. Which is, the thing is, when you're writing nonfiction, you know what happened. Most of the time, you know what happened. But in fiction, you don't know. And you can do whatever you want within, certain restrictions. That duck killer, or deer slayer story,
Yes.
I didn't know it was going to happen. until I wrote the story. But that's an exception.
So I want to talk about your daily process of writing and also what you focus on. Plotting, for example. You and I have discussed Elmore Leonard off the record, and that'd be good to get into here as well. But what is you wake up, what do you do?
I wake up, I make coffee, and I do New York Times word games.
And that's how you write novels.
And Wordle. But my process is a lot different now. I'm retired from the day job. When I wrote my first 5 novels before Bitterfrost when I was still working. And so my process then was to get up early-ish, somewhere between, I don't do an alarm clock, 5:30, 6, 6:15. And then write for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And try to get a certain thing done. Never think about the whole project. You know this. It'll overwhelm you to think about, oh, I have this multi-generational family novel. You can't think about it. You have to think about, this is the scene I'm going to write today, or this is the geography I'm going to, draw. So, I would work for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I would go to work. And when I went to work, I had to just leave it behind and forget about it. And I'd do that 5 or 6 days a week, and eventually I'd finish. Now, sometimes I write in the mornings, sometimes I write in the afternoons. I can write anywhere. I grew up in newsrooms. Right. They're noisy. There's lots of distractions. People are interrupting you, and it's fine. So I can write on trains, on planes, in bars, coffee shops, anywhere. I can just write anywhere. And so when I'm writing, I'm at the moment, I'm not currently writing a third Bitterfrost novel. I've turned in the second one.
Wow.
But I've sent them a proposal for the third one, and when I start again, and then, I try to do a couple hours a day, 3 hours a day, try to get some words down. A good day, 500 words is pretty good. As you get near the end of a book, then you start to, because there's momentum. You know what is going to happen. Not at the end, of course. I never know, but you're piling up words. But, over the course of time, then there's a story there. Mm-hmm. And you hope it's not horrible.
How many times do you redraft your work? Do you revise it?
Well, I do a lot on the way, John. So frequently I'll write, 7 or 8 chapters, and then I'll print them out. And I like to mark them up with a pencil. This is another thing I learned in journalism. I did this all the time in journalism. I would print out my stories and mark them up, because I love the tactile feel of striking out words or sentences, because I believe that when you're getting rid of things, you're usually, not always, but usually you're making it better. And making notes in the margins, and then I take this print out and put it there, and I go back and revise those. I put those changes in electronically, and while I'm doing that, I'm changing the changes as I do it. So it's like a double edit. And then I let it go for quite a while. So in the end, when I have a final draft, I've actually edited it many times. And then I go to Kinko's, and I have them bound, or a print and bound the whole novel. So I have this thick printed document, and then I go through that with a pencil and an eraser, and I do the same thing again. And I actually really enjoy that. And then I have friends, good friends who read it, and they're making suggestions as I go, and I'm incorporating those as I go, and then eventually you give it to the people at the publishing house, at Severn House, and they say, "Who wrote this piece of shit?" and put your name on it.
And that's the writing process.
You definitely want to try this.
It's fairly accurate. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Elmore Leonard was a mutual friend. He's the great crime novelist. He's been at National Writers Series. I had a chance to get to know him pretty well there near the end of his life, about the last 10 years or so. And he told me that he does not do what he calls plotting. He does not want to know what happens next. He says when novelists screw up, they map the whole thing out, and now it becomes a homework assignment that you've got to finish. And that's no fun at all. And you smell it as a reader. If the writer's not having fun, if the writer's not still surprised and interested in what happens on the next page, you also smell that and lose interest. And you just basically said, even the ending, you're not sure how it ends until it ends, basically. Is that correct?
That is correct. The book I just turned in, it's called River Deep. If you like, later I'll read you the first paragraph. I was 3 or 4 scenes from the end, and I drove my wife, Pam, nuts, telling her, I have no idea how this is going to end. I'm right at the end, and I don't know how it's going to end. You know, is Luke going to take out Darth Vader or not? I don't know. And I finally
he didn't
finished.
actually write Star Wars, in case you were wondering, by the way.
Yeah. But with nonfiction, mostly you knew how a story already ended, or is about to end. And I would take all of my notes and documents and all the stuff I'd gathered, and I would go through each page of this stuff and take out pieces and build these chronologies on my screen. And the chronologies would be really long, but actually it's a distillation of what's in this pile of stuff. And then I would use these chronologies as a sort of outline for my story. And I have friends, novelists, who write detailed scene-by-scene outlines for novels. Every scene. And I'm envious, because that's kind of what I did in journalism. But I just can't do it. And it's a character flaw or whatever, I don't know. But I can't write about a character. They have to get on the page and tell me who they are. Which is, with every book, there's characters like this. And particularly in Bitterfrost, a detective named Garth Klimmek, is that I need them to behave on the page. I can't plan them until I know who they are. And I agree 100% with what Elmore said, which is, if I'm surprised as the writer, it's more likely that you, the reader, will be surprised. And readers love surprises that are earned. You can't just have the flying werewolves come out of nowhere and save the day, They have to be earned. They have to build up to a certain spot where the reader at the end goes, oh man, I should have known that. I remember he dropped these little breadcrumbs, and I didn't figure it out. But then, on the other hand, there are the readers. There's some of these reviews in my Amazon and Goodreads where they say, I knew what was going to happen on page 177. And I think, wow, I wish when I was writing this, I had known what was going to happen on page 177. But, God bless them. They read my book. So,
while we're on the topic of reviews, you're wearing an interesting shirt, Bryan. Tell us the people about your shirt.
So, you see this? It says, random, suspenseless trash. And it was a headline on a 1-star Amazon review.
In case you're not aware, by the way, 5 is good.
Yeah. One is not good. And I'm sure this guy would have given me a 0 if he could. But 1-star review on Amazon of my first book, Starvation Lake, and it was like 1,000 words. That's longer than some of the stories I wrote for the Journal, and this guy he was angry. He tore the book to pieces, and you get a bad review. I know, John, you've never had one. But,
Sure.
It hurts, especially if you go, she's right. She's kind of right here.
That's when it hurts. When the point,
yeah.
you think, oh, this.
They're
and that,
smart.
and you go, ooh, that's kind of a good point.
Yeah, but this guy, he was so over the top that it was kind of funny. And I said to Pam, I go, random suspense was trash. Man, that would make a cool T-shirt. And this was like mid-09. And at Christmas, I opened up a box. She's here somewhere. I can't see. But and now I have several of these shirts. I have, what was it? Complex but lumpy. It's a good description of my personality. But and the Washington Post, in a very positive review of Bitterfrost, nevertheless had to say my prose was more effective than elegant. And which is also kind of like me and my hockey game, not my golf game, which is neither effective nor elegant. So, but reviews, it's fun to have good ones, but you're going to get bad ones, and there's no accounting for tastes, and it's a very tiny, tiny piece of the world that are commenting on what you do, and all you can do is write what you write. So I hope people like it.
And by the way, if there are any 25-year-old writers out there, when the man reads that and then turns that into a T-shirt and wears it on stage, that's when you are a professional writer, people. That is rhino skin right there. That's very impressive. This book itself, Bitterfrost, it is one of your Michigan books, of course. And like I said, it's a real treat reading about all of you folks, of course. Kalamazoo, Hamtramck is in there, Kalkaska, Mansland, as I said. Why Michigan? Why Northern Michigan? I know you live here now. What about the area appealed to you as a setting? And before I jump into that, you've already mentioned several times setting the scenes, not just the characters, not just moving the plot along. When I was writing at the Detroit News and Keith Gabe was at the Detroit Free Press, we were across the street. Some of my stories worked, some of them didn't, and I really didn't know why. Until I took Jim Bernstein's screenwriting class at Michigan. He's a good friend of the Stantons also. That's when I learned about scenes, characters, conflicts. And if you're writing a screenplay, the camera's got to be pointed somewhere. You can't spend 3 pages talking about the accounting system at Walgreens, which I did in my second book.
Fascinating.
It was very, very, Brian. If you haven't read it, don't worry. Wait for the movie. Because that scene is going to pop, I believe.
Credits and debits at Walgreens.
Exactly.
Starts Friday.
I shouldn't have done that. It could be his next one. We don't know. And then he goes to a Walgreens drugstore. But scenes, characters, conflict, that's something you're thinking about all the time. It seems like when you write your great novels. Tell us about that process. You're not just saying and then, and then, and then. That's not how it goes.
So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but
Place. How do you pick your
place.
places?
Oh, place. Oh, okay. So
Scenes.
So place. Let's go to Starvation Lake. So I always reach into the real world. The ideas for all but one of my books came from something or more than one thing that happened in the real world, including Bitterfrost. And the scenes, the places, always come from those places. So Starvation Lake, the town, was based on Bel Air, where I worked as an intern at the Antrim County News in the summer of 1978.
Whoa.
So I took, because I love that little town, still do. I had a great event there. And so if you stand in Bel Air with shorts on your right and the theater on your left, and you look that way, that's the Pine County Pilot, which is the paper Gus works at, and Starvation Lake is on your left. Enright's Tavern, named for Father Enright at Catholic Central High School, is on the right. And Starvation Lake is at the end of the street. Now, there's no lake in Bel Air at the end of the street. It's elsewhere. But I built that town around, or I built Starvation Lake around that. And almost every scene I've done in my books is built around something I've seen. When I did the Hamtramck scenes in Bitterfrost, I didn't really know Hamtramck well as a young man, but I did a story on the second end of Poletown, the plant in Hamtramck for Business Week in like 17 or 18. And I spent some time in Hamtramck. And then when I was writing Bitterfrost, I needed it. Well, I wanted a place to send this attorney. So I went back. I had pictures and notes. I take a lot of pictures. They're great note takers. And then I went back to Hamtramck, and I walked around, and I got a feel for it. I'm not an expert. And so I set some scenes in Hamtramck. In The Hanging Tree, the second novel, there are some scenes in Melvindale. And I went to Melvindale. This is a bit of a bittersweet memory because the night before I visited Melvindale, the Wings lost to the Penguins in Game 7 of the 09
Crossbar.
series. Damn it.
But we are not bitter.
If Lidstrom had scored, we win in overtime.
Lidstrom off
Anyway.
the crossbar.
Yeah.
Keith Gave, I know you were there.
I was in, but Fleury got a piece of it, so the goalie for the Penguins. Anyway, and the next day I went to Melvindale, and I'd only been to Melvindale for like an evening once before, but I drove around, and I took notes, and I went down these streets, and there was this one house that had a statue of the Blessed Mother in front, and it becomes a house in the Hanging Tree. And then I went on, there was a little fair, like a festival or something. So I went on the Ferris wheel so I could see. I like Ferris wheels, but I could see everything. And so scenes for me are always drawn from my real life experiences. And in Bitterfrost, as I said, it's based on Manistee. So Bitterfrost, like Manistee, sits right on Lake Michigan. It's got a river that runs through the middle of it. I call it the Jaco River. That's Finnish for division. And, there's little stuff on each side of the river, and so I took it and I shoved it way up by I'm not going to be specific or precise because it's fiction, but it's sort of up by, Cross Village, Goodhart. And so that's up there. And I did a lot of driving around up there just to get a feel for it. And it's great. Then I just made stuff up, But there's still, Kalkaska, Mansalona, all these places I'm so familiar with from living, or not living here, but from coming here. I mean, Hanging Tree is based on the shoe tree that used to be like 2 miles north of Kalkaska on 131. I was always fascinated by why are all those shoes in that tree? And when I was at the Journal, I actually tried to do a story on it. And they cut all, I'm with you, it's stupid. But I couldn't get a bead on why they were there. So I wrote The Hanging Tree, and I made up my own reason for it to be there. And there was a woman hanging there. Looks like a suicide, might be a murder. Let's go.
You'll indulge me 1 minute on this one point. I did not know that you're at the Antrim County News in Bel Air in 1978. My grandfather bought land up there in 1956.
Oh, boy.
But if you go down Bridge Street, or go up it, I should say, it's a beautiful old Victorian home by the park. My great-grandfather, Joshua Bacon, Bought that in 1893, and my grandfather was born there. My great-grandfather was a Harvard-trained doctor who somehow sets up shop in Bel Air, Michigan in 1890s. Who does that?
Yeah.
He must have killed a man. I don't know what happened. Witness protection program kind of thing. So I walked past you many times in the summer of 1978 and not knowing that we'd be here now, but there you go. So
That was a fun summer.
I bet it was.
And this woman, in that summer, at the end of the year, I wrote a little, I'm leaving now, I'm going back to college, a little thank you for helping me out here. And this woman, I should have brought it, she wrote this little letter to the editor, and she said, "We're so glad you were here. This is your calling." Yeah.
Is that the first time you felt that this really is your calling?
I don't know.
Well, you blew your line, but anyway. Let's move on. We're getting the Bitterfrost step by step. We're there now. Would you like to read something from Bitterfrost and we can dive into it?
Sure.
Or save that for the end?
No, I'll just read a little piece because it'll set it up.
There we go. Don't mind all my Post-it notes.
I don't know how to do this. Well, hold on a second. See all these Post-its? This is what Bacon didn't like about the book. All right, I'm only going to read like 40 pages. This is chapter 1. Jimmy wakes to a pinging sound in his head and the smell of blood. He sits up too quickly, and pain blazes up from the base of his neck and wells inside his skull like a fist forcing its way out. He shuts his eyes, trying to squeeze it away. The high-pitched pinging ebbs, but the throb persists. He opens his eyes. He's sitting on his kitchen floor in the dark. He checks the clock on the microwave, 3:53. He's still wearing the black and silver Ice Kings jacket he wore to the hockey rink and then to the Lost Loon Tavern. A draft of winter air cascades over his face. He sees his back door is open, 6 inches, and trembling on its hinges. He gets up to close it and notices he's wearing only one boot. He hobbles outside on his booted leg. The security light blinks on. Jimmy's other boot is lying on its side on the porch step. As he squats to pull it on, he spies a ragged path of packed down snow leading away from the porch, as if someone dragged in an animal. He goes back inside, closes the door, and flicks on the lamp hanging over the kitchen table. Still smelling blood, he lifts his left hand to his face. "Jesus," he says. The hand is spackled with dried blood, the knuckles a hash of shredded skin, an exposed bone, a shade of rust. Blood spatters the silver sleeve of his jacket from wrist to elbow. As he stares at it, the hand begins to ache like it would after pounding some guy's forehead and cheekbones in the middle of a hockey game. What did he do to himself, or God forbid, to someone else? Thank you.
That is the first page, people. So you hit the ground running.
Only half,
and you don't stop. It's it grabs you right away. I burned through this thing. It's fantastic. What inspired this book? And I believe it was real events.
Yeah, 2004. Keith, who's here, would remember this. I'm sure you do. Many hockey fans would remember. A forward for the Vancouver Canucks, Todd Bertuzzi, got into a violent altercation with a forward for the Colorado Avalanche named Stephen Moore. And the result of this was that Moore sustained injuries that prevented him from ever playing hockey again. And Bertuzzi, who later played for the Red Wings, went through civil and criminal litigation hell for about 10 years, later expressed deep remorse. And, at the time when I first heard about it, I'm like, well, how does this guy get to go back to his career? Bertuzzi missed about a year. And that guy who never gets to play again, how does he get to go? But I kind of got by that. And the question that stuck with me, John, was how do you cope with the idea that you may have ruined somebody's life? And, this could apply to like a drunken driver or a mother who left her kid in the bathtub for 1 minute. And, a lot of things that could happen that now you have to live with this forever. But in the hockey context, I wanted to address this, if not answer it. And to do that, I invented Jimmy Baker.
Jimmy Baker is the protagonist of this story. To give you a little more detail of the Stephen Moore Bertuzzi incident, and I did not look it up for this. I don't have to. You don't have to either. Mm-hmm. I'm sure Keith doesn't either. It's one of the most sick. I mean, I've got a pretty high threshold for hockey violence as these things go. Played and coached my whole life pretty much. But this one's pretty sick.
Yeah, it's bad.
A lot of bad blood between the two teams, no pun intended. And Bertuzzi comes up from behind on Stephen Moore and cold cocks him, basically. Sucker punches him from behind, knocks him out, and Moore just goes face first on the ice, smashes his face, his whole body, and he's, like you said, his career's ruined.
Well, then Bertuzzi was
he
picking him up and dropping him.
He wasn't stopping. Yeah. It was chilling. And it turns out Bertuzzi talked to the Red Wings. They liked the guy. I mean,
he's a good player.
Good player, but also they liked him personally.
Yeah.
Which you don't necessarily expect. Not all of them did, I don't think. But
I make no judgment of those guys.
And this book is not about that per se, but the premise is a great one. All right? If you have that moment and you're that guy, is there any redemption? What do you do with your life after that? What does Jimmy Baker do?
Well, Jimmy, he walked away from the game at that moment.
That's your character, of course.
Jimmy Baker. And then when the book begins, it's 13 years later. He's the Zamboni driver for the Ice Kings, which is an elite amateur team in Bitterfrost. And, it's the reason for that town to be. They love the Ice Kings. And Jimmy drives Zelda the Zamboni, who is the biggest celebrity in town, making Jimmy a celebrity. And despite all that, that's good stuff. He has lost his wife. He went through his own litigation hell. He's estranged from his daughter. He lives alone. And his personal mantra is, every day is a penance. And his routine is to work at the rink. And then he goes to the Lost Loon Tavern for one highball. Some of you are old enough to know what that is. And then he goes home. But on this particular night, there's a couple of knuckleheads from downstate who were in the Lost Loon. And they're drunk, and they're hassling the barmaid, Ronnie, who's an old friend of Jimmy's. So he tries to gently intervene, and, things happen. And the next thing he knows, he wakes up on his kitchen floor, and he doesn't really remember what happened. Several hours later, one of the two guys in the bar is found beaten to death. And then I think the next day, the other one is found. And Jimmy is accused of first-degree murder. And so we're off.
We're off. Other key characters, Devyn Payne.
So Jimmy seeks out his friend, Devyn Payne, younger woman. She plays hockey as well. She's tough, good. She plays with the beer league guys, and played for the Ice Queens, the Little Queens, when she was a kid. Her family owns the rink and owns a lot of land. It's one of the two prominent families in Bitterfrost. She's a criminal defense attorney. And, her family loves Jimmy and Zelda and that whole thing. But now she has this client who can't really help her because he doesn't know what the hell happened, really. And she has to defend him. And so Devyn is up against the detective for the Bitterfrost police. His name is Garth Klimmek. And Klimmek is late 50s. He's been a detective for a long time. And he's very devoted to his craft, a little bit of a curmudgeon. But, he likes to say, all we have right now is a dead body in the woods. So don't start solving the murder before. And so there are three shifting points of view, from Klimmek to Devyn to Jimmy and back and forth. And then the story moves on through a trial, and I'm not giving away much here. A lot of laughs. There actually are some laughs.
There actually are quite a few laughs, actually. Where is Bitterfrost? There are various clues in the book, and I, of course, scrambled on several of these. One of the clues was it's 318 miles from Hamtramck. So I start getting the compass out and figuring out where that could be. The best I could do was...
What's a compass?
Yeah. You know what a compass is. My students don't. But anyway. That will find you in Allenville in the UP, about 13 miles over the bridge from St. Ignace. But that's not it.
318 miles from where did you say it was?
From Hamtramck.
Yeah, that's... Well, really?
We'll get you in Allenville, yes.
Yeah, but, you go through all those things. I don't know. There's no lightsabers either, John.
There you go. Well, so what did you have in mind for Bitterfrost?
Well, I like up by, the far northwestern curve up there by Cross Village. And yeah, I can't help it if Google Maps can't get things right.
Good stuff. By the way...
It would be about 318 miles from there to Hamtramck.
That sounds about right. There you go. So I love, of course, you being a downstater. Now you speak derisively of downstaters, the Fudgies. The Fudgies make an appearance. There's also pasties and Zambonis. It's got it all, people. Was it fun writing about local color?
Always fun to write about local color, particularly Hamtramck. It was really fun. And, Devyn really likes it, despite the terrible mission she's on when she goes to Hamtramck. She really likes it. I really liked it. I'm Polish, so even though Hamtramck is now probably the most diverse community in Michigan, it's still lots of Polish and dill pickle soup, man. Bring it on.
Here we go. Anything more you want to talk about before I turn it over to questions?
I'll do that later, I promise. All right, I'll do it now. The next book is called River Deep, and it's based on a crime that happened in Michigan that most of you will remember. Chapter 1. Dark river water sluices off the SUV as a crane lifts it to the surface and out, steel and cable groaning in the dawn. The dead, 2 infant boys, have already been removed. Then it gets dark.
There we go. We've got time for questions here. And I think there's some microphones out there because we are being broadcast soon enough on Interlochen Public Radio.
Wow, there's a lot of people here.
Nice crowd, folks. Well done, Bryan. Sir, we got a question right here. One
Michael.
second. Wait for the microphone. Come. No, please don't, because radio does not work that way.
That okay? Yep.
That's okay.
How did you get an agent 9 years before you had the book finished?
That's a great question.
Was it because of your ties with the newspaper? Most situations I've heard about, people end up with the draft and then have to, shop around and have difficulty finding an agent.
I had an agent in the late 80s because I wanted and did write a book, a nonfiction book about the Detroit newspapers and the Joint Operating Agency. So I had an agent for that. And so she remained my agent for many years. And then she got kicked upstairs, and then I had this agent and that agent. It's a long, terrible story, Michael. So that's a good question.
Other questions? We have one here and one here.
I'm close enough, and I'll come over.
I don't have a question, but I would like to tell Mr. Bacon that I think he is very likely the best interviewer I've ever heard.
Oh.
That is incredibly kind.
The interviewee,
Well, Brian, we both know there's only one secret to this job, and that's shutting up. So thank you very much. That's very kind. Tell my wife that, please.
Brian, I'm currently reading the book and enjoying it very much.
Thank you.
I like the references to local places, some that I recognize and some I don't. I live in Elk Rapids. In the third chapter, there was a mention of a bachelor party. And the bachelor party has a stripper coming to entertain
Yes,
from Elk Rapids.
of course.
And
Okay, before you go any farther,
It's the
might as well
stripper
do-
capital of northern Michigan.
what? I've lived there for a long time, and I'm not aware of that, but I thank you for that information. Was this just throwing a dart at a map and just picking Elk Rapids?
I just picked it out at random.
I figured.
It's a cool name.
Yeah.
Elk Rapids.
Yeah.
Next time it's going to be a pedophile serial killer.
Here we go.
Going to be okay?
Well, that'll keep away the tourists then. Thank you.
Some guy from East Jordan. We were in East Jordan doing an event years ago, and that guy goes, "Could you put East Jordan in the book?" And I said, "Sure. Would you rather it be the home of the pedophile or the serial killer?"
on that note, let's ask another question. Sir.
Sure. Brian, I actually read your trilogy at Starvation Lake, and I'm just curious where you get your inspiration. Your main character was a weekly editor who liked to play hockey. How did you ever come up with that idea?
So this smartass hired
He says
me
that
at
with
the
all
Bri-
due respect.
He hired me at the Brighton Argus in 1979, my first job. And then he and I lived together. We had an apartment on Crooked Lake. You know, it's just funny. His name is Rich Perlberg, and he's a great journalist. It's just funny because when I was first writing Starvation Lake, I had lunch with two of my friends at the Wall Street Journal in Washington, and I told them I'm working on this novel. And Greg Jaffe, who's now at the New York Times, he said, "Please tell me it's not about a hockey-playing journalist." But he's read all my books and he loves them.
There you go.
But yeah, you know, you're right. You're right what you know, and my hockey pals in the audience might disagree that I know anything about hockey, but I did know journalism, and so it was a small-town journalist who plays goalie. And you know, I don't know much about goalies, except that I know a lot of them, and they're, you know. So.
Well, I think it's Richard, correct? Yes. That answers one of our mysteries. Early on when we started out, and I mentioned the Brighton Argus, there's one cheer from over here. I'm not a detective, but I'm pretty sure I got the guy. So good to have you, Richard. Another question. What do we have? Sir, we have a microphone over there, and one over here, too. And one over here. Okay.
Bring it on.
I am not a plant, okay? But I want you to have a little fun and mention a man that got you into hockey and made you write the things that you did. That was our English teacher at Catholic Central in Detroit, as another Detroit boy. Father Enright, that you named a bar after.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi. And this priest would be happy to know if you'd done that.
Yep.
So take a minute to talk about the man.
Father Jim Enright, who I had, we called him Punch. And Punch basically invented high school hockey in Michigan. And the truth is, he didn't know much about the game of hockey. He really didn't. He wasn't a very good coach, Dennis. But he was a genius as an administrator, and he created the first leagues, including yours and our Huron.
Yes.
And and he also taught English, which in a way was more influential to me, not because he was that great of an English teacher per se, but because he assigned such awesome books, including one of my favorite books ever, The Catcher in the Rye. Plus, he was a genius at administering punishments for which today he would almost certainly be jailed, including the slap shot where you have to bend over and grab your ankles, and he hits you in the rear with a hockey stick or a baseball bat sawed lengthwise. If you used bad words, Ajax, in your mouth. My favorite, if you fell asleep in class, he would tape you into your desk. So I remember Tommy Ream, he fell asleep and Punch taped him in, and the bell rang to go to the next class. He wakes up, he can't move. And Punch comes over and says, "Oh, Mr. Ream, you need to be refreshed." He had a bottle of Aqua Velva. Remember that? And he dumped about half of it on Ream. This is what happened in Punch's class. He was a great man, and I named the pub in Starvation Lake after him, Enright's.
Could have called it Ajax.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right, more questions? Sir, we have one right here. And any others you got? We can get 2 microphones out there.
I'm just wondering if the gentleman or the person that gave you the bad review on Amazon ever came back for royalties on that T-shirt.
Well, I didn't make any money on it, so he never did. I don't even know who he was. So, and technically, I told my wife the wrong word. I said random. It was actually rambling, suspenseless trash, which I think is even worse. But it wouldn't have the same geometry here. I like it as small, large, so it's better this way.
No, but I'm with you, actually. I actually want the guy to see it.
It would be great.
That'd be funny. More questions. He will not be here tomorrow, I guarantee you. So get him while you can. Yes.
One back there.
Anyone else on this side? We got a microphone.
Did you get anything from Todd Bertuzzi?
I haven't heard. I don't know why I would, but I haven't heard a word from anybody in his camp, and I don't know how he would hear about it. It's this is not a New York Times bestseller.
Not yet.
But it would be fun, not fun, but it would be interesting to hear what he thinks. I don't think there's any judgment made in the book, and in fact, well, I don't want to give anything away about what happens to Jimmy and the guy he hurt, whose name is Corey Richards. But that's a great question. I wouldn't mind hearing from him. He's a great hockey player.
Would Keith Gave have any insights here? Here, microphone. Thank you.
Sorry, Brian, you mentioned influences like John Irving, World According to Garp. Who were some of the other people that your other influences in your writing career?
The kind of question I should have asked.
Besides John Bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lahane. Dennis Lehane, for sure. Even though she was a short story writer, she had a twisted perspective. Flannery O'Connor. Doyle, even though I couldn't write a sentence, I would separate a shoulder trying to write a sentence like Brian Doyle wrote. But he inspired me because it was like, you know, do whatever you can do. Just tell me stories. A Salinger, for sure. I had a professor at Notre Dame, freshman seminar, who's still a friend. He loves mysteries and thrillers, which is amazing to me. And he told us in one class that the greatest line ever written in American literature was a line in a Salinger story called The Laughing Man. And the line is, without any context, for poise, I picked up a stone and threw it at a tree. And it in context, it's a great line. That's probably my favorite story, short story of all time, The Laughing Man. I recommend it. So years later, I run into this guy. His name is Bill Creer. And I tell Bill Creer, that you told me this line. You told us this is the greatest line ever written in American literature. And he says, no, I never said that. It's like, what are you talking about? You think I just made this up out of nowhere? No, I never said that. So the evening goes on. We forget about that. And then later, he tells me that the greatest rock song ever composed is Night Moves by Bob Seger. And, you know, I love that. It's a great song. And I'm not going to argue with him, but I'm like, so how many years is it going to take for you to deny you told me this? Anyway, I'm sorry, that's an one-off, Keith. But, yeah, definitely all those authors. And if you haven't read him yet, if you like crime fiction, you should read Ken this is hard to pronounce, Jaworowski, Jaworrowski. His book, Small Town Sins, was awesome. It feels like some of the stuff I've written. And he has a new one in October called What About the Bodies? He's a great writer. Nobody really knows who he is yet, but they will.
Related question, what do you read for pleasure?
Mostly I read fiction. I like short stories. Right now I'm reading an awesome book called The Curious Incident of the Boy in the Nighttime, which I've known about for many years, and Pam picked it out of the little library in our neighborhood, and she read it, and then now I've read it. So I'm reading that. I'm reading the latest Dunes review. I've had 2 short stories published in the last year, the first since college. And one was in the Dunes review about a guy who dives golf course ponds for errant balls. And his little feisty face-off with the course superintendent who's trying to stop him.
Kind of the Zamboni driver of golf, basically.
It's a stupid story, but it was great fun to write. And yeah, those things. And that's what I'm reading right now. I just finished James by Percival Everett, which was good. I wouldn't go crazy on it, but it was good. It was a good book. And I listened to books too. In fact, I listened to that Ken J. guy's book, Small Town Sins, and it's fantastic. If you watch like TV series, it reminded me of Mayor of Easttown, with Kate Winslet, which was fabulous. And Ken's right in that. It's set in that part of Pennsylvania. It's terrific.
Very good. We have a question here, a question there in the back. Go ahead in the back, and then right here in front.
Mr. Gruley, I'm just wondering, the author Doyle you're talking about, is that Brian Doyle, who
Yes.
wrote Chicago? Well,
Yes, he wrote Chicago. Great novel.
Well, Well, I'm so impressed. He's such a tender writer, and you write all these murder books. I'm so impressed by you. And
Please don't call my dad is Mr. Gruley.
oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
call me Bryan or
Brian.
Grules.
I'm Gary's wife, Gary Ferria's wife. So
Oh, okay.
we've met, yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, I just wanted to make sure it was Brian Doyle, and I hate to plug another.
It is Brian Doyle, and he was very tender writer, but he just believed in story, you know, whatever the story was. And, you can be inspired by other people, but you can't really follow what they do. You just have to do what you do. And the truth is, when I wrote Starvation Lake, I didn't know it was a mystery thriller. I wasn't like, I wasn't an aficionado. I mean, I read Mystic River, and I've read other such books, but I just wrote a story to me, and my agent said, well, this is a literary mystery. And I said, oh, okay. And, you know, you need, you know, it's produce, dairy, whatever, you just put a label on it.
There you go. Question, go ahead, Doug.
Why crime, Brian? You know, what is it about crime? We're all here in the room listening to both of you talking, but what is it about crime that we're attracted to as opposed to, say, a non-crime kind of novel? I mean, just interest. What prompted you to go in that direction?
Well, as I said, I didn't really choose that direction. But to answer the broader question, why crime? It's just going to sound stupid, but because it's fun. You know, it's like sports. You know, if something bad happened, how did it happen? Who did this? Why did they do it? Who's trying to get them? You know, there's all of a sudden, there's all these natural forces of tension that go in. And what was I just, you know, there's a lot of books that the Eastern cognoscenti would say aren't crime fiction, but they are crime fiction. I mean, Crime and Punishment was crime fiction. And I guess it's just because, you know, it's like, why does crime sell newspapers or the news? Because you can learn about other people that you don't want to be, or you hope you're not, or maybe you want to be. I don't know, Doug, you can make this choice on your own, but you know, you can get in the heads of these twisted people, you know, in cold blood. You're in the heads of Richard Hickok and Perry Smith. These two, you know, they're just two twisted dudes. And it's fascinating to be in there and then to be able to walk away, right? I mean, that wasn't fiction technically, but it was crime. So, I think, you know, you look at podcasts, all the stuff, it's mostly about crime.
Here in the front.
Going from good literature to, I'm a big fan of dive bars, and you've got some great dive bars in your books. The last one, or this book, where she's got a patch, is that a real dive bar? Is it a place that's fiction, or was it a
You mean the
real place?
Lost Loon?
Yeah.
Or the one up?
No, the one up north, where they're looking for Jordan.
That's the D-O-N-N-T.
Yes, D-O-N-N-T.
No, I just made that up.
Oh, shoot.
But
all right. Is there a
yeah,
favorite
but,
dive
you know,
bar?
I've been in a lot of dive bars. I like dive bars. I know
character development in a dive bar.
Yeah,
is great.
that woman, I forgot about her with the eye patch.
The eye patch.
Yeah. There's a guy in the next book
Oh.
with the eye patch. Starvation Lake fans will recognize him as Billy Hooper, who was in the first Starvation Lake book. And now it's 30 years later, and he's back. You should also recognize, if you're a Starvation Lake fan and you read Bitterfrost, the judge, Darlene Esper, was Gus Carpenter, the main character in the Starvation Lake books, his squeeze for those 3 books. She was a deputy sheriff, and now she's a judge, and she is awesome. Man, was she fun to write. Yeah. One of my buddies who's a criminal defense lawyer in Pennsylvania, he read the book. He really liked it. But I had to ask him. I go, did I kind of get the legal stuff right? And he goes, some of the scenes in the chambers were bizarre, but they were highly entertaining. I go, okay. Good. I'll take that. Good question.
We have in the back.
So I just have found this evening to be very entertaining, and I was just wondering how often you do events like this, and whether you look forward to doing them or not.
I hope that's pretty obvious by now. He's having a great time.
I am having a great time. I don't get to do events with this many people and such a great audience that often. But I love doing them. I love doing events, whether it's 5 people or 5,000, as you could see. I did an event once in Philadelphia area, and this bookseller, he was emailing me and going, "Oh, we're going to have a great event. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome." I'm like, "I'm looking forward to this." So I fly out there and I go to the event, and there were 2 people. One was a hockey pal who came because, he felt sorry for me. And the guy, the bookseller, and he fell asleep. But you know what? I remember Dennis Lehane. I saw him at a conference, and he said, "I don't care if there's 5,000 people or 1. You do your thing. You're a professional. Do your gig." So I did my gig that night. But I'm not going back to that bookstore.
Incredibly, Ryan, I can top that, actually. The total of
no
2.
people?
Worse. I can worse than 0. So there I was, minding my own business. Bo's Lasting Lessons, my first bestseller. So I think, okay, we'll do pretty well with this. And we did, by and large. But I'm at a Sam's Club in suburban Detroit. Sam's Club, I'm there at a gigantic table. You know how Sam's Club is. Piles and piles of books. I'm sending them all. Not one person has bought any all day. Thousands have walked past me. It's a very busy Sam's Club. It's a Saturday afternoon. And then there's a guy in, I should know the name of it, one of those scooters. Not quite a wheelchair, but anyway. Yeah. And he's got M Go Blue on the back. He's got bumper stickers all over this thing. The M hat, the M jacket, the whole bit. And I'm thinking, this is my guy.
Ohio State fan.
I'm going to get one. I'm going to get one. And he comes wheeling up. He looks at me and goes, and keeps driving.
Wait, I got another one.
But
I was in the Twins.
These are the dues. These are the dues you pay as a writer. Some don't, but I certainly have. You have. That's usually how I get started.
Yeah, I was in the Twin Cities. I go to the store, and it's just, you just sit and sign. I wasn't speaking or anything. So I'm sitting there, and there's some books. And 4 people came. 2 of them were one of my roommates, college roommates' parents, some other person who just then left. But this young woman came up, and she took one of my Starvation Lakes. And she went and sat against a wall of books over there for like 15 minutes. And then she came back and put it on the stack. And I thought, either she didn't like it, or she's a really fast reader. But then, the saving grace was, the next day I went up to Little Falls. It's a little town about 100 miles north of Minneapolis. And I had a book thing there that evening. And I got there at about 1, and I had a walleye sandwich. And then I went to see the store owner, and I got to the store, and they said, "She's not here." I said, "Oh, okay." And they said, "She's at the hockey game." I go, "What hockey game?" "It's like 2 p.m. on a Friday at the bar." So I go to this bar. It's packed. And Little Falls was playing Breck in the quarterfinals of the Minnesota high school hockey. And I'm like, okay. Gonna watch hockey, have a few beers. Awesome. It was great. And I sold a few books that night. I got a good event, yeah.
Time for 1 or 2 more questions. Who's got the mic? Who's got the last question or 2? Get it while you can. All right. Well, in that case, by the way, you're very kind with your kind comments, and I said the key is shutting up. The real key is having a great event like National Writers Series that does this all the time for this city. It's amazing what they do. And, of course, having a great writer who's a great conversationalist, then your job is quite easy, it turns out. So, also, by the way, great questions, and a ton of them, including my old colleague Shannon Brown here in the front. And don't think I didn't recognize you, by the way. She's the one about the dive bars. I had no idea she had this affection for dive bars, Mr. Brown, so there we go.
And one more thing that John has humbly not mentioned. His book coming out in October, right?
October 7th.
The Gales of November. Try to get that song out of your head now.
No, don't get it out of your head. Yeah. Do not get that song.
The Untold Story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I've read a few chapters of this, and it is outstanding. And I suspect it's going to sell about 45,000 times as many books as Bitterfrost. So, but it's going to be great.
I will be back here November 6th with the great Doug Stanton and Ann Stanton presiding. And if you're not here, I'll chase you down. So, wonderful night, by the way. Bryan Gruley, thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to take a picture. If you do have the book, I know you're going to purchase it outside. Hold it up above your head. We're going to send this to Bryan's publisher. Sean's going to come on up here. No, that's okay. Bryan, if you stand there and face me. Yep. Thanks. All right, everybody. Books high if you have them. 3, 2, 1. Everyone, thank you so much. You too. This was a fabulous, very entertaining and fun evening. Thank you. Please join Bryan out in the lobby where he'll sign your book for you.
Thank you for joining us for this special presentation from the National Writers Series. Coming up Tuesday, September 23rd, join us for an evening with America's funniest science writer, Mary Roach. Today, we're attempting to grow body parts from scratch using stem cells and 3D printers. But how are we doing? Are we there yet? She's written multiple New York Times best-selling books, and her TED Talk is one of the top 20 most watched talks. There's lots to learn, and we promise this will be a funny and informative evening. In-person and virtual tickets are available now. Go to nationalwritersseries.org.